All right, what is up, everyone? Let me jump into something very quickly here. I want to show you, and this is a way that you can use the NLP to build more topic support around a keyword that's really, really important to your campaign. Okay, so let me walk you through kind of what this looks like. Here's an example. Okay, so for this keyword, which is a local keyword, which is fire protection services Houston. What I'm about to do is completely applicable to any keyword that you go after. And we could run through this exercise a couple times, but we'll start just locally here. Okay. And I want you to show kind of like the way that you can work through this, because I think the easy thing to do is basically look at this keyword and be like, okay, these NLP keywords are only applicable to this page. And while that is true, a lot of these keywords, if we swap out keyword for topic, a lot of them deserve their own dedicated page. And what I'm about to show you is we'll prove this. Okay, so take a look at this. By the way, you can do this in Canva. All right, so you can do this brainstorming thing here in Canva. I use Canva for like so many things. Okay, but the point is what I like to do is just visually start to map out what it looks like building topic support. Now, here's the crazy part. Everything that you're seeing here, every single topic that you're seeing that supports this primary topic, which is fire protection services and systems, all of these were pulled directly from the NLP for this particular phrase. So I simply just went through, pulled the NLP, and I only picked topics that I know for sure would need their own dedicated page to be able to properly fulfill the intent. So when you look at this, there's no perfect organization technique. It's more of just kind of what makes sense. And so like you can see that the way I organize this, and I think I would probably shift this around based on some other things I was seeing, but you can see here, like on the left-hand side, we'll go ahead and zoom in. Basically, I've categorized this all by services. Okay, so these are different services that they offer. Okay, theoretically, I could also put some of these in their own, kind of separate bucket. Like for example, fire alarm. That could be its own category. Fire alarm systems, fire alarm installation, fire alarm repair. All of that stuff could be in its own little cluster. But once it gets on the website, that will all start to get organized. But as far as what we're doing here, we're kind of looking at like, what are these kind of core things that are happening? So on one side, we have basically, they do a bunch of services. Okay. On the other side here, they build systems. Okay. Like big, huge operations to build these systems. Okay. So this is like a very big category that's separate. And then the other one here is looking at like, these are specific industries that they serve. Now, of course, they serve other industries, a lot of these companies, but as far as what the NLP is telling us, this is what tends to show up the most. Okay. So at a bare minimum, what we're really looking at here, this is just to like get on to the field, just to compete. Okay. Cause this is like bare minimum stuff that we need to have to at least match the competitors. If we don't have this, then we shouldn't even be thinking about, okay, well, now let's add a page for data centers and a page for restaurants and a page for paint booths and all these extra little, secondary little markets. Don't do that until you've got this part squared away. Once this is squared away, then you can venture into the other more kind of nuanced categories. And then also, looking at cleaning, and then there's also inspection related category. And then of course, a fire equipment category. And then finally, this one here might seem kind of interesting is these to me are ideal client profiles. Okay. So ICP for short. And the reason why I would want to highlight these is just because this is when we're creating marketing messages, when we're creating content, you want to call out the person that is the decision maker in this particular industry, right? So when you're doing B2B or you're doing commercial, it's very clear in the fire protection space that you are going to be dealing with business owners and property owners and site managers and property managers, likely restaurant owners. Like you're going to be dealing with those people. So you need to make sure. And the beauty of this is like, I didn't invent any of this. Like I could have gone into this industry and didn't know a single thing. And within a few minutes, I would basically know a lot about this industry just using the NLP, which is just a like totally, unique way to use this. So so this is what I would be thinking about, when you obviously optimize the page using the NLP, but also in the secondary action that you should be taking is like, okay, we have this page squared away, which is our like really important page. Now, how do we build support around this page? This is how you do it. Okay. And so you would go and you would create the dedicated pages for each of these. But I do want to show you. So my general rule of thumb is if the intent is different, just from a logical perspective, like I try to put myself in the shoes of someone who's conducting this search. So let's say they're in Houston and they're searching fire extinguisher services. Does it make sense to land on the homepage that's about fire protection services and systems? You could get away with it. But it's not the most effective page you could build. And one way you could think about this is like if you had to build a lead generation page and you had to pay Google, like Google ads, to actually run traffic to that page, you'd be very, very careful with how you structure that page. You wouldn't want it to have any ambiguity. You'd want it to be really, really specific. It should be exactly the same ideology with when we're creating SEO driven pages. Like there should be almost no difference whatsoever. It should be exactly the same. Like it should be hyper targeted. And so it's the same with this. You need to have a page that is going after fire extinguisher services and the problems that searcher would have regarding that one thing, right? And so you can really focus in on make that page hyper relevant. Now, here's one I want to show you that's a little bit trickier though. Okay, so sometimes when you're dealing with phrases that almost seem synonymous, that's where it gets a little tricky because Google isn't as smart as it can be sometimes, right? Like you got to be really careful. If you get too granular, you could cause some problems. And so, for example, we have in this scenario, we have fire protection systems. We have life safety systems and fire safety systems. Okay. It's getting very close to and then we also have fire suppression systems, right? So we have all four of those. So when in doubt, there's a few things that you can do. Number one, you can go into Google and just do a side-by-side comparison. Okay. So I'll show you real quickly on this one. Okay. So this is a perfect example of one that would be really tricky. Super, super tricky. Okay. So Life Safety Services Houston versus Life Safety Systems Houston. Okay. We're just swapping out one kind of word here. And the reason why this is a perfect one where you want to run a Google search because they're just so close that usually I will suspect that Google will serve up very similar results just because they're kind of so close. So what you want to do is obviously skip past the paid options and then really look at these side by side and truly see are we seeing is there a lot of variability here as far as the results? And I would argue that there is actually some variance going on here. There are some similarities, like Firetron is showing up here. We've also got, it looks like Life Safety Services pops up quite a bit in here, but this is one of those ones where it's basically a crapshoot because you could try to rank for both of these on the same page just to start and see, and you have to track these individual keywords on their own. So treat them as separate phrases, track them on one page, the rankings over time, and then see which one stalls out or which one doesn't. And then you may, depending on the situation, you may have to splinter off and create a dedicated page if you don't feel like it's performing as well as it should. And so for me, when I say not performing as well as it should, if it's not number one, that to me, that's it. I don't there is no other option. This is winner take all we're going for here. We should go for number one. And if we don't feel the strategy is sufficient to be number one, then we should change the strategy. It's that simple. So I think, but this is why testing is so important, especially one like this. if I was prioritizing my keywords, this little group here would be towards the bottom because I know it would be the most difficult to deal with. But let's say I did have to deal with it. I would, of course, my first test would be probably I'd give it about 4 weeks of hyper focus on one page, and I would optimize that one page for both of these variations, and then just let it ride. Let it ride, see where it falls. I would predict that one of them would not perform well. At least one of them would not do what it should do. So then the next action would be, okay, let's splinter it off, you would have to go back to that main page, under optimize it for the 2 terms, and then build out the new page that's hyper focused on the one singular phrase. So if it used to be optimized for life safety services and systems Houston, it would now just be optimized only for life safety services Houston. And the other one would be only optimized for life safety systems Houston. Man, that's hard to remember. So, but that is the way that you can kind of test this back and forth. So not to get like overly technical and nuanced here, but this question is very common. And people struggle with this a lot, and keyword cannibalization can occur. But it's these days, I don't even really, keyword cannibalization, of course, is a thing, but it's more for me at this point. I just view it as underperformance. So like, I just think we haven't deployed the right strategy, and we've got these other pages that are just making this other page not perform as well as it should, or vice versa. So I think that's a better way to be thinking about it. But going back to this I highly, highly recommend doing this. I think a lot of the times when we start SEO campaigns, it's like, especially when we have clients who are paying us and we have deadlines, we want to just jump right into it. I think it's good to give yourself, like at the beginning of the campaign, give yourself like a week to just map this all out. And you don't have to do this again for a very long time. But once it's mapped out, you can just focus on execution, knock all this out, and it's going to feel so much more organized. And then you can just kind of focus on the other things that require a lot more, let's say, creative work. Notice that one of these over here, which once again, I pulled directly from Rankability, is fire protection industry. So when I saw that actually got me really excited. Like if I was, building out assets here, because that is a seed for link bait. So I could start building out a lot of link bait related to the fire protection industry. Okay. And going back to the ones where you've got some keywords that are very similar. If Google doesn't give you the answer, you can also go into ChatGPT. Okay, so like for this example, I went into ChatGPT and I think I put it right here. Okay, yeah. So I wanted to see like real differences between fire protection system, fire suppression system, and life safety systems. Okay, I wanted to see what are the differences here, and it would tell me. And come to find out, there is nuance between these things, right? There's specific nuance. And then I think I added another one here, fire safety systems as well. So then it kind of recalculated. And then once again, kind of all of these have their own kind of unique characteristics. And so when you see there's a lot of unique characteristics associated with a topic, leaning towards building a dedicated page seems to make a lot of sense. But if ChatGPT came back and said, these are synonymous, then I'd say, okay, there's no point. So that's really where you want to spend your time thinking about that. And then the other piece of this too is if you wanted to create link bait, you could just take this seed and run it through ChatGPT and say, create me data-driven link or give me data-driven link bait ideas specific to the fire protection industry for a fire protection company in Houston. Make sure it's specific to Houston. And you would do that and it would build out at least, 10, 20 ideas, and 50% of them would be good. And then the others you could just scrap, but that's more than enough you would need in a campaign like this. So anyway, any questions on that, guys? Any questions? Any clarifications on that? Okay, good. So we can open into some Q&A. As far as rankability goes, we're working hard behind the scenes. You guys would not believe how much just goes into some of these things. It's just like, I'm just grateful to have developers. Let's just say that much. And I'm grateful to have Simon, who's working with our developers, because man, there's so much work that goes into this. But I'll tell you, like, as I mentioned before, the big things that we're working on right now Number one is adding AI functionality specifically into the editor. So there's going to be a little, so similar like in the brief, we have the little AI button here. There's going to be an AI button in here. So it's going to give you a bunch of functions you can use that the AI can help kind of supplement your content creation, like right here in the editor. Okay. And then the other big piece of this is obviously the ranking diagnosis, which we're working hard on, and the content optimizer 2.0, which is going to be unlike anything you've seen. Because basically what's going to happen is you're going to be able to enter a keyword just like you do now in the optimizer. And we're going to use the technology and the things that we have going on in the back end to automatically determine what the intent is. So you won't need to figure it out. It will automatically do it. And of course, if we can get to about a 95% success rate as far as determining intent, I will be happy. Okay. So that's what we're going for, is like about a 95% success rate when it runs through, that it can determine the intent appropriately. And then it will spit out the outline specifically based on the intent of that keyword. So it doesn't matter whether it's an informational informational keyword or a commercial keyword, it will know exactly what it is. And the same goes for like the type of page that you would build. Because it will understand the intent. If let's say you put in blue shoes, it will know that, and by analyzing the competitors, it will know that the best type of page to build would be a category page, right? So then it would create content that's specific to a category page, not specific to a blog post. So it would know the difference. And that also the same on the local level. If I was doing one for Fire Protection Services Houston, we go back to that example. 200 to 1,000 words is the optimal for this keyword. Like that is going to be very, very lean as far as the content. So it's a clear indication that there's a lot of commercial content that needs to be created. Now, this is clearly a commercial keyword, so it would easily be able to identify that. And then it would spit out an outline that's very specific to that. And then once the outline is complete, you'll have the opportunity to go through and make any edits on the outline if you want. And then from there, you can either just take that outline and import it into the optimizer and then go through and have your writer write it, or you can just use the AI to have you write the content, or at least build out a first draft for you. And so I've tested this already using various tools, and it works. And we're going to do it within here. It's going to be basically just clicking a couple buttons, and it's going to be extremely super, super fast. There's some other AI tools out there that build the content for you, but they also give you ridiculous amount of different options and crazy stuff, which we don't feel are necessary, because really the AI is doing all the heavy lifting, and we can make some adjustments along the way. But we're just making it simple. And as you can tell, we like simple. So that's really what matters. So editor, and also the grammar and spelling will be built into this as well. So improving the editor with the AI, adding Content Optimizer 2.0, and then the ranking diagnosis as well. That'd be version 1.0, but I can assure you the ranking diagnosis over time, it's going to be insane. Anyone that has access to the ranking diagnosis checklist, if you're an Academy member, obviously you have access to it. It is available outside of the Academy as well. But there's 80-ish checkpoints for any keyword that you have to go through. So our goal with that tool is basically if we can get 70 to 80% of those checkpoints basically automatically taken care of for you. And then you can go through and improve these pages. Sometimes it's going to be an NLP related issue. Other times it could be, it could be the fact that your page is too slow, something as simple as that. So we're going to be able to see that. But there's just a lot of variables. So that's what we're working on. And of course I have a bunch of other ideas, but I won't share those. A lot of crazy ideas, and I make Simon lose sleep. So yeah. Simon, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, one thing, guys, in the live version now, you'll notice that, so as you can see on Nathan's screen there, the keywords, there's always 100 keywords. We started with 100 keywords standard right across the board. But we further refined the optimizer. And basically, the problem with just having a stock 100 keywords is, depending on how many competitors you have and how competitive the keyword was and the word count and all these different factors, sometimes it doesn't make sense to have 100 keywords. Like, let's say that your target optimal, word count is like 800 words. Well, if you have 100 keywords, you got to stuff into 800, like, not that you have to get 100%, but the percentage is a lot higher, right? So, and what ends up happening is, especially we've heard from quite a few users that if you're doing like local searches, when you get towards the bottom of the keyword list and the importance score and the relevance score starts to drop off, you can get a lot of irrelevant keywords. So long story short, now when you run a keyword, you'll see this keywords, the amount of keywords will be varied. And this is right now. So if you run and you guys might have seen this already, but sometimes it'll go as low as, like, if it's a super, like, really low competition and low, word count, it'll be as low as 40, 45 keywords sometimes. Other times it'll be as high as 100, but you'll see it vary within that range of like 40 to 100, depending on the competitiveness of the keyword. And like I said, the word count and what your competitors are doing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's just a big change. And the good thing about this is that it'll actually, it won't, like, because we're the NLP keywords that we're leaving out are the least relevant. So it's not like we're taking away some of the most important keywords. We're taking away the kind of the extra fluff, for lack of a better word, at the bottom. So it just will mean less work to get a higher rankability score, which is really the whole point of this. So it's just a little refinement, but it's an important one that we've made. So yeah, when Nathan runs this, you'll see the difference.
Right. And I was just going to say, because some of those keywords at the bottom, like, just because they're there doesn't mean you should inject them into your content. Like, some of them are going to be totally irrelevant. I think the nature of it is, like, because it's there, that is actually incentivizing people to want to inject that stuff, even when it's not hyper relevant to that core topic. So, I mean, we've just found, like, that bottom, we could even say maybe like the bottom 20%, even more, is probably not worth adding into the content. And if it is, it'd probably happen naturally anyway. So it's just important not to.
Even sometimes it happens where you see some keywords, quite frankly, I've seen some situations where sometimes it's near the top, like, and that happens because, again, the NLP, Google and IBM Watson, they're just, all they can do is give us what we're feeding them with the content. And sometimes an irrelevant keyword will show up over and over again. None of these pieces of technology are perfect, right? But here's a perfect example. So 40 keywords, right? But the ones that it didn't include were like the really super low relevance scores at the very bottom that you don't see, that were like 1 out of 10.
That no one's really using at all.
No one's going to use it anyway. And again, we've tested this. So yeah, this will just, I mean, if you can do less work to get a similar, a good result, I mean, why not? So just in case you guys see that, that's what's going on there.
Right. Oh, and the one other thing I think I didn't mention is we are always, like, our long-term goal is with the rankability score that it's going to continue to kind of change. It's not just going to be NLP specific. So that is something we're working on as well on the back end. One thing is to, like, all these calls. So we officially have them like, it's in Vimeo. And obviously I think our goal is to kind of move it into the back end here. But if you go to help, a couple things is you can go to the masterclass, which, if you haven't watched that, I would. Obviously, if you're an Academy member, you know my stuff. So, but it might still be worth seeing this in the rankability context. And then the other thing is, if you go to Mastermind calls, this will take you to a database of all the calls we've already done. So if you guys want to check those out, if you want to be like, go and review one where we talk about some stuff, there's a lot of content here, like tons. So it could take you a while to get through it. But yeah, Anne, go for it.
Hey, Nathan, just want you to elaborate more on your process of, like, content organization using your Fire guy. So when you're organizing this and you are researching the term fire protection, what is it called? Fire protection services, and you see all of these, different content silos. Do you write like I guess, whatever it's called, like a pillar post or a like a guide post on all of this stuff and then splinter it out into sub content, like, individual pieces of content? Or do you treat that like the homepage and splinter it out? Or, like how do you, and then like with these individual services, do you, like how are you linking that out, or how are you organizing that? And then like how do you prioritize? Because I know you mentioned that you would start off with like the prioritizing link bait content first. So I always struggle with like trying to put all of the pieces of the puzzle together and starting with like, the main board or the main piece of content. But then I run into issues with like, is this going to cause duplicate content because I'm talking about it in this article and then I'm writing a more in-depth article about like, fire sprinkler systems or something like that. So yeah.
Yeah, a great question. So yeah, I mean, as far as like my workflow and the way that I try to approach any campaign is I always start as broadly as possible as far as their core offers. So like what you don't want to do is like start with the most micro stuff and then try to figure it out. Like I'd rather start like, what's the biggest topic that we have here? Okay. So in the context of this particular business or industry, fire protection is that broader topic, right? Fire protection services, that's the overarching broad topic. So what I do is I begin there and then build out because it's just easier. And now as far as what I do, as far as like where I target, that there's some nuance there, right? Because it's going to depend on the business. Okay. So like, for example, let's say this business only targets Houston. Okay. That's it. They don't target any other cities. They only target Houston. That would make sense. Houston's a big city, so they could definitely target just Houston and probably build a very big business. Okay. So if their website is just going after Houston, what I would do is the homepage would be targeted for fire protection services, just naturally, because that's the broadest topic. That's what we're going to do. Okay. So we're going to build that out. On that page, what I will likely do is hit on a lot of the secondary topics on that page with the intent to drive internal links to the dedicated page for it. Okay. So I might have a little section in there about fire suppression systems, right? So it might be, fire suppression systems is the heading. And then below that, I might talk about fire sprinklers and fire alarm systems and kitchen suppression, fire suppression systems. I might hit on those, let's say third tier type of keywords. I might hit on those and then internally link to those pages. And then I would do another section about services. Then I do another section about the industries that we serve. And I do another section about the inspection part of what we do. And then another section about equipment, right? So basically I'd be hitting on almost everything on this homepage. But the goal is obviously to build a highly relevant page, but really the goal is to send the users to those dedicated pages so they can learn more about those service offerings or systems or whatever else they're doing. So that's kind of like part one, is getting that page is like the hub. It's the hub for everything. And so once that's built, then obviously you need to build out all these other pages, these other commercial pages. And then as far as linking them, what I would do is once everything is built, then I would start to think about the navigation, right? So like, let's say we'd move this over here. This is like, let's say this is the logo, right? Because you don't usually putting home in the navigation is pretty outdated technique at this point. So this, let's say this is the logo. Then I would start to look at these and say, okay, what would the navigation items look like here? Right. So we might have like, we could have a services drop down, right? So it might be like, it could literally be labeled services. And then within the services, we could have, you know, a little section here for fire extinguisher services. And then within that, you know, it'd be a faceted navigation. So then it would be like fire extinguisher repair, fire extinguisher installation, fire extinguisher replacement. I'd be hitting on all those topics, all within that faceted navigation. And I would just keep building the layers like that. And then eventually you would have such a comprehensive structure that you'd get all the proper internal link coverage. You'd build out proper site-wide relevance, because we're just focused on Houston. So now we've got really this beautiful relevance going through the whole site. That's all Houston focused. And then, you know, just keep building upon it. And then I know you mentioned as far as prioritization, as far as content on the local, well, actually, honestly, in any campaign, I actually don't prioritize link bait. I prioritize commercial pages first. So what you're seeing here is exactly what I would focus on first. So I'd build out all of this, and then I would build out my link bait assets. And so most of these, now with the beauty of AI, we can build these out very quickly, probably in like 1 to 2 months. Probably have like at least a foundation that's comparable to the top competitors. And then once that foundation is built, then I'm going to start to look for opportunities to say, okay, how can we start to build out more topic coverage than the competitors? The good news is it's really easy. Like in this industry, you can see there's a lot of, I can just see a lot of missing stuff here already. Like, because I know this industry well, like even with fire alarms or fire extinguishers, like I mentioned, there's so many different subcategories of fire extinguishers. There's installation, there's repair, there's inspection, there's maintenance. Like you could take each of these little topics and there's like 5 to 10 subtopics that you could build dedicated pages for. So really the goal should be like to be the most comprehensive. And that should be like the goal. And there is, I don't know if there's like a point where you hit that where you're like, we did it, we're the most comprehensive. It's just kind of, you just kind of know, because you've basically just, there's nothing left to build. Like you've literally hit every topic that exists in this industry. So does that make sense, Anne?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for like fire extinguisher services, would you like do an article on fire extinguisher services Houston?
Correct.
Specifically?
Yeah.
Okay. And then that URL.
Yep.
Okay. And then if they decide that they want to expand to Dallas, then you would have another page for fire extinguisher services, Dallas, etc.
Correct. Yeah.
And then
So
how would
basically,
that, how would that look like on the navigation in terms of like the site, and there's a drop down menu for services, and you've got, I guess you would go locations and then services, right?
Yeah. So obviously what I'm describing here is the easiest scenario, right?
Yeah.
Like this is like, okay, Houston, easy. Every page is optimized for Houston, right? So it's fire alarm system, Houston, fire suppression systems, Houston. It's all Houston. Okay. But let's say client says, all right, we're good. We've captured a lot of market in Houston. Let's move into Dallas or San Antonio. Okay. Then that's where I start to get stressed, right? Because I'm like, all right, okay. All right. So now we're going to do Dallas. Okay. That's great. All right. So basically what I would do is I would think about replicating what I've done here, like, but for Dallas. But the thing is this is where it gets very, very, you got to make some smart decisions, because what I see most people do is they will build out, let's say, they try to do all this stuff at once, right? So like a client will come on, they'll be like, we want to go after, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin. And it's like, okay, whoa, slow it down a little bit, because those are really big cities. Like those are not small cities by any means. Like those are big campaigns. You need a lot of resources. And the problem is when I see a lot of agencies do is they'll be like, they say yes to everything. So, oh yeah, for sure, that's great. Now let's do it. And then what will happen is basically they'll hit these different cities, but they basically go a mile wide, but an inch deep on all of them. So they're blanketing all the cities, but they're not even hitting on all the little subtopics and all the stuff we're talking about here. And you can see like there's so much, like this is just from one NLP analysis, just one. Could you imagine if I ran this for every single one of these, how many other topics I would find? It'd be insane. I mean, we'd have probably enough topics for the next 6 months just to build in one location, right? So the reason I'm saying that is because it's a very serious decision to go after another city. Very serious. It's not a joke. And I think people take it way too lightly. They're like, yeah, let's just go after Dallas. And then they just slap up some Dallas pages on the site. And that's not a good strategy. So the alternative, there's really only two ways to do this. I'm talking about the best way to do this, not we can do it, literally the best way to do it. Okay. You're going to need buy-in from the client. So you got to figure out like what they're willing to do. Okay. And if they're willing to do certain things, let's say they're very open-minded, the best strategy is build out a different website. Hands down, the best strategy is just, I'm going to build out a Dallas website that's specifically for this market. We're going to build it basically identical, but just for Dallas. That's the best case scenario. Not all clients buy into that. Okay. They just won't. Okay. Along that same line, the best case scenario, this is like absolute best strategy. You would use an exact match domain or a very keyword rich domain. So DallasFireProtectionServices.com to that level. Okay. Because you'd want a Google business profile, and then you'd want to absolutely crush everyone in organic. So that's the way to do it if you want to crush everyone. But if the client says, no, I want to keep it on brand, I want to keep it on this site, we have ambitions of moving into Missouri and Illinois, and and then now they're getting crazy. So then I say, all right, let's do that. Basically, the way I would treat it in this scenario on a single domain is think of it as a multi-site situation. Okay. So instead of doing it like, I'll go on Gotcha SEO, for example, instead of building out like, we did like we're going to do like, Houston fire protection. We'll just say fire services here. Okay. Just whatever. Houston fire services. We're going to build it all out like this. Okay. This is why it's important to know what the client's ambitions are, because if the URL structure is going to be like this is really only effective if you're doing one siloed out location on the domain. Okay. Because the problem is if you want to go into Dallas, the best thing to do is to do a multi-site. So you would do like /Dallas. Okay. And then we would build out fire protection services like this. Now, the reason why I would want to do that is because if we build out the multi-site, you can do this on WordPress. Basically, the Dallas version would be specific only to Dallas. You wouldn't, like, if you landed on this Dallas version, you wouldn't see really anything about Houston at all. The navigation would be specific to Dallas. The content would be specific to Dallas. They would be treated like they're almost literally different websites altogether. Everything would look the same, but to Google, they would feel very different, right? And so you can only really, and like if you're going to do this, the multi-site, don't do a subdomain. You would do a subfolder, and you would basically just repeat this across all the cities they want to go after. Now, let's say they're really getting ambitious, and now they want to go, well, let's just do the whole United States. Okay. They'd already be paying a lot of money if they wanted to do that. But the point is, if they want to do that, well, now you'd really have to change the structure a lot, because now we'd have to focus on state modifiers. So now we'd have to do something like Texas, and then Dallas, and then fire protection services, because every one that you build out would need to have its own. It's basically a separate website on the main domain. So hopefully that didn't confuse you too much, but does that make sense as far as strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a hard time with organization. So that your main keyword that you plugged into Rankability, and it says that if you could go back to your Canva mock-up thing, it's fire protection services and systems. That's your homepage. And so on Rankability, if it says to write a 2,000 word article on this, are you going to have your homepage like optimized for that, or are you just using it to do your content plan? Because I love the idea of using it as a content plan, because that's kind of like the one thing I miss about Surfer, even though it's not like perfect, but it gives me a lot of topic ideas. So I think this is like, it's a great way to get those ideas. But
Right.
do you like, are you optimizing like a 2,000 word article or whatever it says on your homepage with that informational content, or like,
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and like, I wouldn't even like, I would remove article from your like
yeah, okay.
lexicon, because
hmm
I wouldn't even like, if it's commercial intent, just don't even think about articles. Just
Mhm.
remove article from your mind, because it's not the same type of content, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a different, when you're creating commercial pages, the intent of a commercial page is to drive leads, right? We're trying to drive leads, and the type of content that we put on there should be purely designed for that purpose. So the answer is, when we look at this one, like you see the word counts 200 and 900. Like, we're not talking a lot of words here, like very, very minimal. So you got to choose your words wisely. Okay. Here, like, you cannot mess around. Like, you don't have a lot of room to be super fluffy. So, which to me is just a signal that the page is going to be, it's going to have a lot of design elements, and we're going to have left, right formats, and we're going to have different sections. It's going to be a well-designed page with a little bit of content to help, move that searcher to become a lead, right? So just a different thing altogether. But the answer is yes. I would target the homepage specifically for this keyword phrase, which I would consider the broader phrase, right? Because you want to target the homepage broadly, because that bleeds into all the more secondary and tertiary phrases, right? But you gotta basically set the stage with the homepage. Now, I don't always optimize a homepage, right? Not in every scenario, but like I said, if they're a singular location type of business and they're just doing one city, it just makes perfect sense that the homepage would be hit for that, right? So, but if the other scenario, which we outlined, which is multiple cities and all of this stuff, then that just adds complexity. And this is why, when you're in the discovery process with a client, really, really dig into what their goals are. What do they really want to do? And like, I have a client who's in this fire protection industry, and he's told me, like, I want to eventually go here and there and there. And I'm like, okay, well, it's good for me to know this, because we're going to structure the website for that future ambition right now, so we don't have to go and do a bunch of 301 redirects, right? So yeah, does that make sense, Ann?
Yeah, it's crystal clear now.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and I was using this to write sales content for a Google Ads a sales landing page. And so the nice thing about it is I can use it as like a sales landing page, and also like hope to get some organic search traffic too. So I should charge them more for optimizing for both.
For sure. I mean, I think when you're dealing with commercial pages, like, if you do it the right way, you can actually, for a lack of a better phrase, kill two birds with one stone. You can, if it's built the right way, not only will it perform well organically, but it will perform well with paid. And that should be the goal. Like, you shouldn't need two pages to do the same outcome. That's kind of a weird, like, I see that a lot. It's like, oh, we've got our organic page, and then we've got our paid, like our paid search page that's like totally different. It's like, well, why would you have one page that's built for conversion, one that's not? Like, I don't understand that, like, rationale. Like, just make one page that's built for the intent, and that's it. The only benefit I'll say to Google Ads, by having, like, let's say a page that's no indexed and invisible to everyone other than the traffic that's going there, is just for testing. That's the big benefit, right? Because you can run split tests, A/B tests. Like if you're using, I don't know, like lead pages, for example, you can run A/B tests like all day, basically, and see what works best. And then of course you could take that data and you could deploy it to the organic page as well. So there's benefits. I'm not trying to knock it too hard because I do that myself. But once again, like you should at least take what you're learning from the ad side and definitely apply that to the organic page as well, for sure. So the goal is to get leads, right? Or make sales if you're an ecom. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Very,
You're welcome.
very helpful.
Yeah, of course. All right, Jacob, go for it.
Hey, I just have a follow-up question, kind of going back to some of the organization, which I've also kind of been thinking through lately. Is there a golden number for how many items you should have on the primary navigation before you start thinking about like drop down so it doesn't get too crowded if you're trying to like split some of these pages up by the topic or like the type of page that they are?
Yeah, I don't think there's like a perfect number per se. I think you got to kind of visually just look at it yourself and be like, okay, is this getting a little overwhelming, right? And this will largely depend on the complexity of the website and the complexity of the topics that you're dealing with. So like, for example, if you go to like, we'll use a pretty extreme example here, but we'll go to like Pottery Barn. Okay. And you want to see some pretty intense navigation. This is how far it can go. Now, when you look at this though, when you look at their navigation, it's really not that overwhelming, right? Like it's pretty straightforward, like, but it's really, really effective, super effective. But if we go over here, watch this. Now, all of a sudden we're getting into some stuff. Okay. Like it's starting to get pretty intense here. All right. But this is when you're dealing with a website of this size, you need this level of faceted navigation. Right. And I don't think most local campaigns probably wouldn't get to this level, but just to show you, like, don't be afraid to do this. Right. Because ecom sites do this all the time. And you can see, like, look at the level of complexity that these go to. I mean, it's pretty intense. So yeah. Does that make sense, Jacob?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I was just kind of thinking through it because I know that's a lot going on up there. I just didn't know if there was like a number where, like, especially for like a local business, where it gets too overwhelming, or if it's just kind of depending on the way it looks, like design wise, if it's kind of just, depending on the website you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always good to just kill any fluff. I think I see a lot of navigation where it's like there's just junk up there that shouldn't be up there. Like sometimes you'll see, and this is like, you see this a lot more with local businesses because they just don't care as much. But like I'll see sites where like they have the terms of service in the main navigation. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Like, or they'll have their social media icons above the fold. Like, it's those little things make a big difference as far as user experience. So there's obvious like best practices that we should all really be aware of, but when in doubt, just use user tracking data, right? Like that's the best thing you can do is use something like mouse flow. You slap that on your client's website and you can see what are people actually clicking, or where are they getting stuck, or what's going on. Because from there you can say, okay, well, we've got these 7 nav items here and only 2 of them get any clicks. So why is that, right? Well, is it because maybe there's too much clutter? Maybe there's too many choices. There is issues with too much choice as well, right? Like this has been proven quite a bit. Like once you have too many choices, people just literally will not make a choice. Like that's what happens, decision fatigue. So yeah, I think just cutting any fat and making sure the navigation is built to achieve whatever objective you're going for on your website. So like, that's why on my site, like I'm pretty strategic with the things I put in my navigation. Like I'm not messing around. Like there's no fluff here. These are intentionally picked and then like really thought through to make sure that like these are the right things to be up here. And there's other stuff like I have other things that I could talk about, obviously in navigation, but I've tested this over the years, and obviously I have a lot of informational content, all this stuff, but it like Also, like I could put rankability into the navigation, right? Like someone would say who looks at my business and be like, oh, why don't you have rankability in there so you can get more sales? Well, contextually, it's not relevant to the academy, right? So I need to make sure that the navigation is contextually relevant to this core thing that we're selling here, as opposed, and this is like on rankability, I wouldn't slap in the academy in the navigation, right? So these things, this is what the like you thinking about this is time well spent is the point that I'm saying. It's a good thing to be thinking about, but when in doubt, just let the data guide you, right? Because you can see it. So yeah, Ben, go for it.
Nathan, so yeah, just around this same topic, is that the reason why you've taken out blog from your main menu, because you don't want people necessarily to go off topic reading that, and that's to draw people in, and you can just lead people to the lead?
You've exposed me.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's I'm glad you brought it up, because yes, that's a very deliberate decision. Because once again, I've tested this over the years. I mean, I've had my site going now since 2013, and you can go back in archive.org and you can see the different things I've done over the years, different tests, different things. Yeah,
I've
and
done
it's
a lot of studying of your stuff, Nathan. Honestly,
yeah.
I'm like, right, whatever Nathan does, just
well, be careful there, because you never know what I'm going to do. So, but yeah, I mean, I just love testing, right? Because I always like to challenge my assumptions. Always. Like one thing that I think works right now, it may not work in 6 months from now, right? Like I may have a different, maybe I learned something new. I'm like, now I can modify my strategy a little bit. But what I found is when I started to look at the data, if people want to find my blog, they'll find it, right? And the thing is, I'm like, the purpose of my website, although my blog is effective for building trust, it's not the right intent of what I'm trying to have happen on my website. So like, for example, if you go to like a really good example of this is like Apple. Okay. So go to apple.com and look at how their site is structured. Okay. You don't see anything about learning here. There's no learning. They want you to buy stuff. They don't want you to learn. They want you to buy. And so it's a very like, you have to be really, really careful with this. And by the way, this is something I've had a hard time with, because my natural tendency is to teach and to educate. That's my tendency. I lean into that a lot. And so I put a lot of emphasis on that. That's why I create so much content. That's kind of like my wheelhouse. But as far as your website goes, you got to be really careful with that, because what you don't want is, let's say someone's really interested in the academy. Okay. They come here, they're super interested, and they've watched a bunch of my YouTube videos. They end up here like, oh, cool. All right, I'm ready to apply. And then they see like blog up there. And they're like, well, maybe I'll read. Let's see what's going on in his blog today. It's over. It's over. Because once they've gone into the blog, now they're in education mode. They're in learning mode. They're not in conversion mode. And this is why, like on social media, this is why I really like social media is so difficult to sell on, because let's say you're on TikTok and you're trying to drive leads on TikTok as an agency. Well, the problem is you're not just competing against other agencies on TikTok. You're competing against all kinds of stuff. Like, as you know, TikTok's pretty wild. There's a lot of things on there. So you're competing against highly viral content, things that are wildly distracting. And you're also competing against a platform that's literally been manufactured to keep you on it. So it's not a simple shift of like, oh, I'm watching cat videos to now, oh, I'm going to buy agency services. It's just the shift of mindset is that's so challenging to swing that. And that's why on social, that's why you never really want to do direct like offers on social. Like if you're going to, let's say you were going to use TikTok to drive leads for your agency, like you would want it to be very subtle. Like it would be something like, hey, sign up for my free masterclass, and get some sort of free offer to get them off the platform, but not like, hey, spend $5,000 with me to buy my services. Cause there's too long of a you got to basically take them from entertainment mode to conversion mode. And that's not an easy thing. And this is why search in general, I'm not even talking about organic or paid, I'm just talking search in general is so effective. It's insanely effective because you know exactly what someone's searching. If you deliver the right page, the likelihood they convert is astronomically high if you do it well compared to everything else, right? So, so the point is like, I'm very careful with leaning too much on the education side. I want to be really careful. So that's like even everything here, like I do have the free agency training, but of course this just bleeds into the offers. So I have these here, like I have this here with the intent of like, okay, maybe someone came here through my blog. Okay. So maybe they landed on a blog post. They read the blog post, like, all right, I'll see what this free agency training is all about. Okay. They're in a different state of mind. They're still in kind of learning. So I'm basically trying to take them from like, hey, you're learning. Let's learn a little bit more. Let's go a little bit deeper. And now I can hit you with a front end offer. Okay. And so my front end offer, just so you know how my funnel works, like if you go here and you go to this will take you to a just a simple lead magnet that basically explains the 7 mistakes that you can make. And at the end of it, I hit them with the book offer. I don't hit them with the academy. So I hit them with the book offer because I know the book offers a much lower ask, right? Hey, $10, you get a ton of value. Like it's a no-brainer. Like, why would you not, right? If you're doing this, you might as well get the book. It's $10. Then when they go to this page, which is where they can actually buy the book, a couple of things happen here. So I'll show you guys on the back end, getting off the rails here now, but I'll just show you guys kind of what happens. So then I have this funnel kit that I set up basically. Okay. Just a little soft, very similar to ClickFunnels or any of the other ones, very similar, but it's native to WordPress, which obviously I love, right? So go in here, and the way this works is they can purchase the book. There's a one-click upsell, which is this ranking diagnosis, okay? When you're thinking about the reason for the one-click upsell is not because I'm making a ton of money from this. It's just to basically recoup my advertising costs or my acquisition costs. So just to recoup it. So basically I'm acquiring customers at basically $0. That's what I'm trying to do. Then the real magic happens after that sale is complete. A small percentage of people will take me up on this upsell, okay? Which actually isn't really even an upsell. It's just, hey, apply for the academy. I'm not even selling them anything. Just, hey, just apply. Like that's it. It's very simple. No, not a crazy offer. Very small percentage of people will take us up on this offer. But of course, the game's not over after this. I'm just trying to capture the hottest leads, right? The hottest people who are really they are on a mission to make this a reality for themselves. I'm giving them that opportunity, right? For everyone else, which is the majority of people, you typically, let's say, maybe we convert at 7% roughly as far as applications in this funnel. We're talking 93% of people who have not applied. That's a lot of people. And the way that works is, well, then they get the book and then they read the book. And of course, there's academy offers in there. And then they get the ranking diagnosis. And once again, they see how the quality of the systems are. I'm like, oh, I wonder what his other systems are like. So I know how this is like, I just know my market well, and I know kind of how to get people in the door. So it's giving a lot of entry points, lots of entry points. And that's one thing I've learned is I have so many entry points to so many of my products. Like just in my book alone, there's entry points for Rankability, there's entry points for the academy, and it's all just in that book. And then there's obviously entry points everywhere else. So that's one thing I think a lot about is like, if I'm not getting conversions, I just need more entry points. That's typically what I need to think about. How do I get more entry points? And that could also be even on the content level, right? Like I'll often go on my YouTube channel and look at stuff that has a lot of traffic. Okay. So let's see, I'm on my main channel here. So like I'll go into analytics and then I'll see, like right now, last 48 hours, what's driving the most traffic? And then I might go in there and start making some adjustments on CTAs, and just so I can drive more traffic to some specific offer that's relevant, right? So making adjustments on the fly as well. But yeah, I just shared a lot. So that's that's kind of what it looks like. But I'm always testing. That's a key. Like I never pretend to know anything, because all I can do is put something out there, see how it performs, and if it does well, double down on it. If it doesn't, make an adjustment. But I'm very careful not to. I used to be very dramatic with my testing. I used to be like, that sucked, I'm burning it to the ground and starting over. And that used to be what I would do. It just basically rebuild everything. And I realized you don't need to do that as much. Like I'll give you a small example of this. Like on Gosh SEO, you'll notice if you look archive.org on this page, it hasn't changed very much over the last 6 to 12 months. If you see something on my site that's not changing, take note, because I'm telling you, if it's not changing, that's actually what you should be paying attention to. If it's been the same for 3-4 months, it's working. So I'm not gonna touch it. I'll let it go. Just let it ride. And then eventually when I see there's some sort of stagnation, like if I see, I start to feel it, that something doesn't feel right, then I'd say, okay, maybe there's some banner blindness going on. Let's kind of shift things up a little bit. And sometimes it could be the copy. I almost always go to the copy because it's just the biggest lever point I can pull, but it could be literally shifting the design, like just shifting things all of a sudden. Like now all of a sudden everything's left aligned and there's a video. Like I may just like shift something up because there is this banner blindness that occurs. Like imagine someone who's not in the academy and they've watched 25 of my videos. They've been to my website 100 times and it looks the same every time they go there. 100 times, boom, boom, boom. After 100, they're not really seeing the messages anymore. They're not seeing it. It's just, oh yeah, scaling agency. Okay, yeah, I want to do that. Anyway, yeah, it just doesn't do anything anymore after a while. So that's why you do have to switch the creative. And this is the same. I know you have a lot of experience with ads. Like you have to keep changing the creative pretty frequently on other platforms. It's the same with your sales pages. You do have to shift things sometimes when you see there's stagnation. So anyway, yeah. Hopefully that helps, Ben. Anne, do you have a question? I know I saw your hand.
Yeah, just talking about your homepage. Your websites are very toned down. Like there's no hero image. There's no like razzle dazzle. Is that on purpose? Would you do it differently if you also did like web design and stuff?
Believe it or not, no, I wouldn't. And this is funny. I'm glad you asked this because there's a few versions on my site if you go and look back, and there's some that are like fancy design. I had a few moments of like fancy design. Okay. My conversion sucked really badly when I did that. At one point, I basically ripped the Netflix design. I don't know if this one will be an archive.org, but basically I took Netflix design, sent it to my designer and said, I want my site to look like this. So just do it. And then it didn't do what I wanted at all. And so what I found, at least for me personally, and remember, this is always so specific to what you're selling, the industry that you're in. But for me, there's this philosophy in direct response copywriting that like ugly sells. It just does. Like when you look at a lot of the things that sell really, really well, like sales pages that convert like crazy, they're so simple, so simple, because I'm not trying to impress someone with my UI, right? That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get a point across. I'm trying to get into their head. I want to hit them where it hurts. That's my goal. And that's only achieved through copywriting. And it's even small things. Like, I don't want to get too crazy here with some of this, but like you'll often see people who will put white text on a black background. Okay. And nothing wrong with it. That can work, right? And like Rankability is currently in dark mode, but we're going to be shifting over to more of a white kind of look here. But if you look through like countless studies, black font on a white background works the best. It just does. It just is that simple. because it's the easiest to read. It doesn't require straining. Like sometimes when I look at, like, if I switch between this and like dark mode, my eyes actually, like, I have to like take me a second to like adjust back to it. So it's very small, subtle things. The other thing is too, is there's certain elements on your page that matter a ton. And the biggest element, like the biggest section on your page that matters more than probably anything else on the sales page is right here, what you're looking at. This is it. If you don't get this right, everything else below here is irrelevant, totally irrelevant. And one thing, that, by the way, and this is, I know we're getting kind of deep here on direct response here, but I tested the Academy page. And what I had for a long time was a very deep, long page that had tons of stuff on it about the training. And it wasn't until I had this hunch. I'm like, what if I had left a little bit of mystery instead of giving everything? Why don't I just a little bit of mystery about the program, because if you think about it, if someone's going to apply and I give them everything that's in the program, they're going to kind of create their own trailer in their mind, their own mental movie of what's in there. If I've given them everything, they're just going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I probably already know all this, whatever. Like that's the path that people will go because there's a natural resistance to change. So we're always looking for things that say, oh, yep, that's it. I don't want to do it because I saw that. I already know this, right? So you're always looking for things because change is really difficult. It's very, very hard. And so humans, including myself, naturally will always gravitate towards status quo. And so we'll look for things that will confirm our subconscious need to be status quo. That is exactly what we'll do. So, and so if you give someone too much information, it could be dangerous. It's kind of a weird thing like that. So what I did is I made a shift here, and you'll see that it's very, very simple. Like I don't really give a lot of anything. I just hit on the core things that we do, right? So you're either starting, you're systemizing, or you're scaling. Okay. And I try to turn the knife in a few things, right? Like only 1 in 10 SEO businesses get to $1 million per year, right? Like I'm calling them out a little bit, right? And then of course, testimonials. These are very strategically placed testimonials. This one obviously aligns with this point. Okay. So your testimonial should align with the argument that you're making. I'm talking about starting an agency. He says, I started an agency and I'm successful, right? So I'm building the social proof. So I'm not just saying something, I'm saying something and then I'm proving my argument. Imagine you're like a lawyer and that's what you're having to do. You're having to prove your argument. You say something, you should show proof. Say something, show proof. And you do that back and forth, okay? Same thing here. This one's about systemization. I show a situation talking about systems and processes, right? I'm getting very, very granular. Once again, scaling, talking about this, and Dan talks about the various things here, okay? And then this is the part that I changed a ton is I used to have just like crazy depth. Oh, here's what's inside the SEO expert certification and the SEO, and I went deep into it. But then I just changed it to this, just kind of just simple, nothing crazy, real simple stuff about the broader things that they get, little stuff about me, this part here is designed specifically for the different types of people that will join. So obviously like we have an individual that will join and then we have agencies that will join. So like rankings.io is in our program, right? So different mentality. So you want to kind of hit on both those target markets. And then this is just pure, ridiculous social proof. And you want it to scroll for decades. You want that. That's exactly what you want. Don't ever, ever, ever not show your social proof. Like make it overwhelming to the point where like, okay, they have to question whether it's even real. That's the point you want to get to. And that's why like on my reviews page, I get really crazy about this. Like this is all part of the game that I'm playing, right? This is all part of it. So does that answer your question, Anne? So
Yeah, I was always curious about that because I mean, obviously you can, spend a lot of money on fancy UI and images, and I just wondered, like, that's got to work. So, like, if we have an excuse that we can't fix our website because we don't have, like, we're spending so much time tweaking our site, it's a waste of time. It's like you have to focus on the substance over style.
Exactly. Yeah. And by the way, I've wasted a lot of money on design, tons and tons of money. I've gotten custom design pages. At one point, I had a custom design page for the Academy, multiple launches of the original Academy. I had a designer come in. It just, for some reason, I just hated it. It just didn't do what I needed to do. And like, I believe what should carry the conversion is not the design. As long as you've done the bare minimum, which is like, it's fast. That's one thing about my site. It's blazing fast. It's fast. And it's not distracting. A simple design. It should not be distracting. It should be simple, and it should have one focus objective. Like if you go to any page on my site that's built for conversions, I have one objective. The only reason why this page has this navigation is because it's my homepage. So I need to have some other stuff up here, but normally I wouldn't even have any of this. Like if you go to this one here, I have one objective. There's nothing here. Like I got rid of everything. You can't go anywhere. This is it. This is it. I want you to do one thing. And the worst thing you can do on a sales page is have multiple like goals of a page. I see that a lot. I'll see a page that's like, call us and then, or submit a form, and it's like multiple, you're telling people to do too many things. Like just have them do one thing. That's it. That's why like on my page, it's just apply now. And then I intentionally send them to this specific booking page because there's nothing else here for them to do. That's it. This is it. And take it or leave it. So Alicia, go for it.
Oh, okay. Hi. Yeah, two questions real quick. One, I'm also a very big fan of changing everything. I change all the time. And someone told me that my ranking was, I was very good in January. And then I changed to, someone told me my speed was too slow because my theme was too big. So he suggests me to change to a simple one. And then after I change that, the speed goes up, but my ranking sinks. And then the SEO person told me, because you change the theme and the website structure changes. And then that's how Google has to recrawl everything. And that takes a couple months or maybe a couple weeks. So my first question is, as an e-commerce, should I change structure all the time? Like my blog, by the way, thank you, Anne, for asking that question, because I am so confused with all that too. I want to reorganize everything about my blog, and I don't know how do I do that. And the second question is, when you put in the customized URL, can I customize there for myself as well? I mean, I use Shopify. Where do I change the URL name?
Yeah. So going back to changing things, there can be negative repercussions of changing things on your site. The question is whether it's a short-term issue or a long-term issue. And that's where you got to try to, figure that part out. As far as like, a lot of people make a lot of decisions based on loading speed, and sometimes it's not the right decision. Like, for example, I have this social media post baked into my mind of this so-called SEO expert. And I'm just kind of give you some insider information for some of so-called SEO experts in this world. They don't know business, a lot of them. They don't understand how business works. They've never sold anything in their lives. You need to be able to sell stuff to truly know how this all works and how all the pieces fit. And so once you understand how to sell things, SEO makes a lot more sense because you're not going to do like stupid stuff. So what I'm referring to here is this guy said he did he went into Google PageSpeed Insights and he ran a keyword or ran a page through it, and it got a low score. And it got a low score on Google's PageSpeed Insights because it had a video. So what did he do? He went and removed the video and improved his loading speed. Now, was that the right decision? Like, that is not, like, his mindset is he's so fixated on Google's little score that he got, that he's not even considering the fact that the video could have actually been helping the page increase dwell time, drive more user engagement, drive sales, drive conversions. Like, it could be helping more than hurting. And so these are things with, like, these are called, it's like the second order consequence, right? You do something and you cause another thing. And this is why with SEO, you got to be so careful. And this is why it can't just always be an SEO decision. It has to also be like, is this a good business decision as well? Like, is this going to hurt our conversions as well? So we need to be thinking about that. As far as loading speed goes, there's the law of diminishing returns is very powerful here. There is a certain point of loading speed where if you go even more, you're not going to see any benefit. So what I'm talking about is, like, if we look at, we can go and let's just grab my homepage here and we'll run it through Google Page Speed Insights. And I'm not really trying to rank my homepage for anything, but the point is just, you can see this, okay? I don't know where I'm at on this, so we'll see what happens. I don't think I have any videos on this page, so it shouldn't be that bad. But the point is like, at a certain score, going 5% or 10% higher is literally going to be pointless, okay? So the only time that improving loading speed is beneficial is if your site is really, really bad. Like, if you're like, let's say you're 20 and below, right? So like, I have a 50 on this, okay? Saying I have a 50. Now, what am I going to go and invest all my time in improving this? No. Like, 50 is perfectly fine. I'm not going to do anything about this. I have way more priorities I'm not concerned about. If I had some time on my hands, I might go and make this up to a 70, but it's literally not going to move the needle at all. At all. It won't move the needle. It just won't. So like I said, the only time that it's going to really move the needle is, honestly, if you're like at 20, like if your score's a 20, going to like basically a failing grade, which is kind of where I'm, or like kind of in the orange, it will be sufficient. Okay. Anything beyond that, you are probably not going to see any benefit. Okay. So I've literally seen people who are like, oh, we only have a 75 on this, so we need to get to 100. And it's like, why? What's going to be the benefit of it? And so once again, look at desktop, which believe it or not, in my industry, most of the traffic is desktop, by the way. So if you look at my analytics, it's flipped compared to other industries. It's mainly desktop, which makes sense because people doing SEO are typically doing it on computers. Desktop is where it's at. Mobile is, no one's really like trying to run a screaming frog audit on mobile. So it's just not like a thing. So the point is, just be really careful with that. Now, as far as your structure changing, that is a very dangerous thing. Your URL structure, if that changes, that can cause a lot of problems, especially if it changed to something worse. Or just in general, changing your URL structures is dangerous for the fact that you're creating a new URL and you have to send a 301 redirect to that new URL, which whenever you have 301 redirects, there could be a little bit of authority loss through that redirect. So for example, like let's say you had a page that had a lot of backlinks going to it and you decide to change the URL structure, you go to a new one, and now there's that redirect in place from the old one to the new one. That original page had all the backlinks. There's a possibility that you're not going to get 100% of that value passing through. You might lose 10, 20% of it. No one's been able to quantifiably prove this, but based on how I've seen how websites react to redirects, it's pretty clear that at least it takes a long time to recover after redirects. So as I mentioned, this is not a simple thing because the decisions are, you could have negative repercussions in the short term, but could be beneficial long term. And so that's why when I'm trying to make decisions for especially a website, like an e-commerce website or a big website, we spend a lot of time thinking about what could happen. Not just directly, like, okay, we are going to improve the loading speed. Okay, yeah, there might be an effect of that, but like what else is going to be affected? What are going to be the second order consequences of this move? And we need to think about that as well. So yeah, I mean, site structure is really, really important. Like spending a lot of time mapping it out. And that's why, like, why I spend so much time just showing you guys this, because this is where my mind goes. Because I want to make sure like the site structure is really, really squared away. And when in doubt, just look at the big players. Like I showed earlier, Pottery Barn. Look at the way they structure things. They're pretty flawless, honestly. They do it really, really well. Go to Amazon as well. Look at Amazon. I mean, there's a lot of examples in e-commerce where you can basically just model exactly what they do. But once again, you have to be really careful with changing URLs. And then also on top of it with URLs, you'll see like here, I'll show you for outdoor sofas. Okay. The canonical URL here, look at it's shop, outdoor, and outdoor sofas. Okay. They don't add a bunch of fluff onto their URLs. It's just very, very straightforward, very simple and specific to the primary keyword that they're going after. They don't add a bunch of stop words and various things in there. It's just very lean. This is the model that I would at least study, because they do a really good job. And I don't say that very often about a lot of websites. So, but they do a good job. So yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. My pleasure. All right. All right. Well, I guess that's it, guys. Yeah, I hit on a lot of stuff there, but I hope that was helpful. And as always, as you guys are going through Rankability, feel free you can email Simon, email me, Nathan@gotchaseo.com, Simon@gotchaseo.com. You can email support@rankability.com. We're here to help. So please, if you see any issues, if there's things you want to see, just let us know. We're pretty obsessed about this. So we're working hard on it, and just know we've got a lot of good stuff in the works. So thank you so much, guys, for subscribing to Rankability. And I guess we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.